Hello, hello. Welcome to the third episode in this series of life hacks or productivity hacks. This episode is going to be focusing on a technique that is very close to my heart. It is perhaps the easiest thing in the world to be able to do this. We talk about low hanging fruits. This one is so low, this is actually an underground potato in a manner of speaking. Do not let its simplicity deceive you. It is perhaps if I were to draw a quick list of 10 things that I can do to improve relationships, to improve communication, to improve productivity, even this would invariably be right at the very top. So, what are we talking about? We are talking about replacing one three-letter word that we use in our conversation with another three-letter word. Both are very, very commonly, frequently used words. The first three-letter word is but, and we seek to replace this three-letter word with and. Every single thing, everything that you want to say with a but can be said with an and. Bar none. There is no exception to this rule. Okay. The usage of but does three things. A, it creates the physical equivalent of pain in the human mind. Right. So, you know how you feel when you are in pain at a body level? It creates an equivalent of the same pain in the human mind. The receptor cells that light up when we hear but are exactly the same as those that do when we are in pain. So that's one. Second, and you have noticed this already, subliminally, if not consciously, the usage of but, and certainly the repeated usage of but, changes the emotional temperature of the room. And like rooms have a physical temperature which is 23 degrees, 35 degrees, etc., every room has a constantly evolving dynamic emotional temperature of the room. And you will notice just the usage of the word but, irrespective of what came before it or what came after it, changes the emotional temperature of the room for the worse. You are unlikely to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve by way of your communication by the constant usage of but. And third, at the most cellular level, but invalidates everything else that came before it. So the moment I start a statement, I use 5, 6 words and then I say, but I just trivialized the first 6, 7 words that I used. Right. So what's the antidote? One thing that I found that has proven to be useful in my conversations and in conversations that I've had the opportunity to observe is that when you want to express your disagreement, it is almost always a good idea to not say in so many words that you are in disagreement. Just go ahead and say what you want to say. Think about it. The moment you say you are in disagreement, you are now putting an emotional charge to this conversation. Uh, Human beings have an infinite capacity to make things about us, especially when things are not about us, right? And uh, it is almost always a good idea to consciously navigate, steer clear of anything that presses these hot buttons inside us. So first thing that you can do is that if you are communicating disagreement, just go ahead and say it. So for example, one of the things that I do is say another way of looking at this is so and so. Please understand, this will in no way undermine the importance of what you're saying or dilute the importance of what you're saying. You try it, okay? Second is that when we are having a communication, we are having a conversation, and there is some kind of disagreement, there are occasions when there are vehement disagreements, but 60, 70, 80% of the time, the disagreement is on 20 or 30% of the content of the conversation. There seems to be broad agreement on a bunch of things. And if you find yourself in those situations, it's a brilliant idea to just point out the specifics with which you are in agreement, so that you say that you are fundamentally at a DNA level, in principle, on the same side as the other person. And then wherever you otherwise use and, otherwise use but, use and to say that these are the 1, 2, 3 specifics that you like, that you think differently about this, right? The executionary details, etc. This is again very powerful, because when you focus on similarities, you build relatability, and that gives you greater bandwidth to process, to deal with the disagreements that come in later. And finally, the point is, any single statement, any isolated, quarantined, everyday statement where there's the usage of but, you can use an and. I'll share an example with you. One of the most common happenings in the workshops that we do is that at about 1 o'clock, someone raises a hand and says that he or she is hungry and that they'll like to break for lunch. We typically break for lunch at 1:15 or 1:30, and it's sort of pre-decided at the top of the day. And when someone says that it's 1 o'clock and I'd like to break for lunch, I can either say, but it's only 1 o'clock. And now, if I do that, wish me good luck with the rest of the workshop now. Right? Or I can say, I can see that you're hungry, and it's 1 o'clock right now, and I think you should be able to break in the next 15 minutes or 30 minutes, as the case may be. Now, this is the most peripheral of conversations that could have gone straight, setting up on the tension charts, right? Had I moved the focus from the subject to the person, right? So, it's always a good idea to see in what you're saying, is the focus shifting from the subject to the person, from the message to the messenger. Right? In sum, what we're really saying is, and this is a useful benchmark for me to have, is that it is bad enough that we disagree with one another when we are saying different things. It's bad enough. It is absolutely criminal that we disagree with one another simply because we are saying the same things differently. Use and instead of but, and see the magic flow. Like that. Right? I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found this useful.